with Split. Okay. About 8 years ago, we had a group of engineers, and they got together and they said, we've built all these great feature flag systems, but we believe that feature flags alone without data leaves a lot of value on the table. And from there, we built the company up. And now we work with companies like JP Morgan Chase, SAP, Swedbank, Rabobank, Apple, ABN AMRO, the Nandockers, who just did a fantastic job, by the way, and Kazoo here locally, and many, many, many others. And we help them to solve 4 problems. We help them to release features more quickly, and as discussed, while releasing features more quickly, mitigating risk, and then measuring how the features they roll out are affecting the real user's experience and the business. And then finally, and hopefully most importantly, we help them to improve the quality of life of the engineers, because when engineers spend their time building new functionality rather than fixing things, when they don't have to do late night releases, no more war rooms, no more triage, when they have a good, clear understanding of how the features that they are rolling out are affecting the business and driving outcomes, they tend to be happier engineers, easier to attract and retain great talent. So those are the 4 problems we solve: release more quickly, mitigate risk, measure and drive outcomes, and improve the quality of the engineers. I'm here today with my good friend Heather, who's going to do the rest of the presentation. But we've got a local team, Vi here, who's one of our customer success people. We've got Tenny and Iram, who are really amazing solution engineers. And I'm actually joined here by our CFO, John Capoletti. So if anybody wants a discount or is unhappy with their bill, wants to complain about the moth, you get it. Anyways, we're grateful for you all coming. And with that, I'll hand it over to Heather. Thank you, Heather.
That one? Can everyone hear me now? Great. Okay. Cool. Yeah. So thank you again for having us here, and for Red Badger for hosting the first community event as well for us. So today, just actually to reinforce as well, my name's Heather. I'm an experimentation advisor at Split. I've been with Split for about 6 months, and loving it, and love working with all our great customers, and yeah, really happy to be here. So so as Ben was saying, for the next 20 minutes or so, going to talk about the value of measurement and product experimentation in Split. So this is pretty much going to reinforce a lot of what Nando's have talked about as well, and how they're using Split, how they're using experimentation as well. So hopefully there'll be some parallels and familiarities there. There we go. So Ben already kind of did a great little icebreaker there, but I have another icebreaker here. So for those who may or may not be familiar with experimentation, the first part of this presentation is going to be kind of more to do with the value of experimentation, the value of measurement, and then getting into, how you can do that within Split. So at Split, we have a lot of B2B customers. Their goals are primarily generating leads and driving revenue. So we do then end up having the primary action for users, which is filling out forms, giving us your data. Now, I'm sure we've all been burnt in various different ways with really poor form UX. So whether that's spending hours trying to figure out why is this not working, why is there an error, why do they need this information, loads of different reasons. So this is really big pain point for a lot of our customers. And kind of going to ease in with a nice, easy experiment here, but it has a really strong message. So some of the key pain points we get here are, why do you need this information? Is this page secure? What are you going to do with my phone number? And am I going to be bombarded by salespeople trying to get me schedule a booking? Do I know what the steps are? What happens when I press submit? Are they going to ask for my credit card details? The list is endless. And a lot of our B2B customers, where they do struggle with low traffic and things like that, this is a huge blocker for them. So there's a lot of experimentation opportunity here. And so what this particular customer ended up testing was adding a trust or a privacy icon, because they had some information to suggest people don't really trust their website. They're worried about where their data is going to end up. So they thought, let's whack a security, privacy seal on there, and that should, that's a no-brainer. Like, let's just, add that, and that should be fine. And you suggested, well, why don't you experiment? So does anyone want to guess which one won? A? Is that A?
Yeah.
A. Cool. Great. I feel like I gave it away a little bit there, but it's like, no, it's not that obvious. Does anyone want to guess by how much that won?
20%. 5%.
18? 20?
80.
Cool. Oh, 80. Okay, cool. Not quite that high, but I think 12.6% is still quite high. And the takeaway here was that even though I did kind of give it away, the customer were super against testing, and we thought this is a really easy one to kind of show the value of don't assume anything. And now, obviously, if they had rolled this out, they would have reduced their number of leads over time without realizing it. And they were actually quite surprised. So this is the magic of testing and measurement. There were a lot of questions they had. Well, how, where did they get stuck? Did they exit? What did they do? And so these are all the great things you can add into Split and capture all that information. The most interesting thing is someone had read that security icons and trust seals increase conversion rates. And whilst this is true, customers and users typically expect this on a retail basket page, not necessarily on a form submission page. So iterations could have been, maybe it's a link, maybe it's something else, but again, just don't assume, think of different designs, think of ways that this might be more contextual. So yeah, that's a really great example of a simpler test and how to optimize an existing journey. So the key takeaway here, and this is one of our favorite taglines in the experimentation team at Split, you win some, you learn some. So people talk a lot about wins and losses, and it's not about losses because a loss is still an insight. It's about learning. Revenue is great and wins are great, but it is about getting the insight on your customers to give them the experiences that they need. So what exactly is experimentation? So experimentation is a lot of things. It's measurement, it's making better decisions, it's capturing knowledge and information that you don't get anywhere else. It's being innovative, it's software usability, statistics, agile experimentation, MVPs, hypothesis, all these kind of things. So all these words are things that are floating around these days. And there's generally a lot of confusion around validation, optimization, experimentation. Are they all the same thing? So they are similar. However, typically, if you're thinking 14 plus years ago, experimentation was very marketing-led. It was a marketing initiative. So the experiment that I gave you as an example was optimizing an existing experience and being able to improve on that, with really quick and simple ways of testing on the front end. Now, experimentation has since then moved a step sooner. Why should we release, excuse my language, shit experiences to then figure out, oh, this doesn't work, and how do we optimize it, and how do we scramble? So actually, experimentation has taken a really important step back, gives us the ability to test, is this the right product? Is this the right feature? Is this the right audience? Should we invest in this further? And so on and so forth. So that's really the power of Split, is being able to capture all of those different use cases. So experimentation is typically A/B testing, split testing, and I think the Nando's team as well, they explained this concept, and I think you had exactly the same image, I think. So yeah, so you're familiar with his image, but effectively it's randomly bucketing your digital traffic into groups, being able to serve them into 2 or more groups typically, being able to serve them particular treatments, targeting based on different audiences, because we know that users inherently behave differently, and we want to be able to put this into cohorts and segment and all that kind of stuff. So testing gives you the power to be able to test those different experiences. We also then, as I mentioned, thinking about the product side, we have a lot of customers who do a lot of testing on the back end. So testing on their code bases, how do they improve performance? How do they mitigate risk? Again, thinking about percentage rollouts. How do you, test to 10% of your users before rolling it out? How do you roll back really quickly without code releases and code changes? And, you have the flexibility to do all of that really quickly, thus reducing risk, mitigating risk altogether, monitoring those important metrics for your business whilst capturing data that you don't already have. So that takes me to my last point, which is making data-driven decisions. So being more data savvy, data informed, moving into that agile way of thinking. So I think there's been a lot of similar words flying around: progressive delivery, continuous delivery, experimentation, agile experimentation. They're all very similar in the sense that there is no end goal to experimentation or end goal to your product. You're always going to continue wanting to know what do our customers want, how are their needs and behaviors changing, and having a tool like Split and understanding your data and leveraging that to adjust your roadmap is going to be extremely valuable. And so anyone really involved with building digital products should be doing measurement in some way or experimentation to make your life easier. So I'm going to go into a couple of do's and don'ts. So how do organizations make decisions if they aren't data savvy? So let's go back to, I think it was 1964. So going a little bit back. Everyone's familiar with Coca-Cola. So I'm going to talk through the consequences when you don't understand your customers. Now, this is maybe taking a little step back, but you can apply it to a lot of situations which we do see with customers today in the digital space. Oh, 1948, sorry, even further back. So back in 1948, Coca-Cola dominated well over 60% of the US market share in terms of their brand, their products. They were smashing it and they were happy and they were in their happy little world. And then suddenly they were like, oh, okay, this is decreased to 22%. How has that happened? Now, they probably took advantage and took their position for granted. The soft drink world was starting to grow arms and legs, and there were loads of different competitors coming out in that space, namely Pepsi-Cola. So Pepsi-Cola showed its ugly face, and they were like, oh, this is our new rival. And the whole rage was that their drink was sweeter. People loved it. And so the CEO decided, oh my God, I'm panicking. This must be the flavor. This is why everyone's preferring Pepsi. It's different. We have to do something. So what they decided to do logically was spend $4 million to make it sweeter. They changed their 100-plus-year-old recipe to make it sweeter, to react to this threat, seemingly. And they thought, yeah, that'll work. Let's do that. So they kept their branding. They added a nice little label saying this is a new, Coke, amazing. It's better than Pepsi, all that kind of stuff. It was a really bold move. In this context, they didn't have any data. They didn't, use any customer research. They just assumed and panicked, and you could argue it was a hippo decision, and it was the wrong one for them. Sales tanked, and they had to revert back to their old brand. So the moral of the story here, as Marty Kagan from Silicon Valley Product Group says it so well, is deploying product is the most expensive way to validate an idea. So often I speak to customers and they're like, experimentation is so expensive, it takes time, it's going to take forever, and to be honest, what's possibly worse is building a product for 2 years and deploying something that no one cares about. So that is always my counter to this point. So what we have here is maybe a traditional view of product development. You build a feature, you implement it, and then you see if it works. And this is both risky and expensive because you don't really have any idea, you don't have a temperature check of, whether that's still, going to work. And I've worked with some top companies where they have really old infrastructures, and they have 2-year capex budgets. They're very locked down, very inflexible, and this is a huge risk that we still see. So instead, you might want to actually consider proving a concept worked with, for example, a minimum viable experiment. So this, for those who maybe aren't familiar, this is MVP or painted door test, where you're testing something that is the least possible thing that you have to build. If it works, if people engage with it, if people show appetite, then you might say, okay, let's throw more money at it. Let's see what the data is looking like, and then let's go on from there. So the win-win there is that if it wins, great. Maybe you secure more budget and you take it a step further and you build it. If it loses, don't build it. You know, maybe iterate on it. If it's worth looking at, well, we maybe have to think about the hypothesis. Maybe we have to move a different direction. But basically, you either make money or you save money. So experimentation is a win-win because you're making money or saving money. And I'll talk a bit later about some of those other value levers. So how should organizations make decisions? So this is a really great example. What you're looking at here is a World War II aircraft. And you might be wondering, why am I looking at a World War II aircraft? But those red dots that you see are basically representing bullet holes. So the mechanics at the time were tasked with the job of, we need to better armor or armorize, I don't think that's a word, but reinforce our planes so that we can protect our pilots and make better airplanes and that kind of thing. And so they're looking at this and they're thinking, okay, well, obviously, we put the armor where the bullet holes are. So what does everyone think about this?
Planes that made it back.
Sorry?
Planes that made it back are the ones that see the opposite of the theory. The ones who made it back, that's where you should be applying the armor, not in the planes who got shot in the other places never made it back.
Exactly. Yes, so I can tell you've been doing experimentation and you are data-driven. Because a lot of people have got this wrong. And they're like, oh yeah, put it where the red dots are. So yeah, exactly that. You don't think logically. You're thinking these are the planes that made it. What about the ones that didn't make it? And those were actually the ones where the bullet holes were pretty important parts, like the engine, the propellers, maybe the areas that you have to add that extra armor. So in this case, it was exactly that. It was where the bullet holes aren't. So this is actually trips a lot of people up, surprisingly. But the point here and the takeaway is that don't assume, look at data closely, track the right metrics, really think about how what the problem is and the degree of the problem and the scale of the problem before you start solutionizing. So again, this is where Vi comes in. Vi had a McDonald's breakfast this morning. But but the problem here, and I promise you there is going to be context around this, but the problem here is what's for breakfast? So McDonald's in the US, McDonald's love their healthy breakfast, and I can't really blame the Americans in this case because we have it here as well. But I'm going to go into a concept here. But who would have a milkshake for breakfast, or who would have a McMuffin for breakfast? McMuffin? Milkshake? I don't think the milkshake appeals to anyone. Who wants a milkshake for breakfast with cream on top? So the point here is, and I think someone actually mentioned the concept of jobs to be done. Maybe I misheard, but so Clayton Christensen, for those who may or may not be familiar with him, he's a renowned Harvard business professor. And he had a very key article in the Harvard Business Review about digital disruption, digital innovation, and that whole concept of jobs to be done, which was vital in a world where we are so focused on building products to solve problems. So when we talk about the concept of jobs to be done, we all have a lot of tasks in our lives or jobs to be done. Sorry for repeating it. You might want to pass the time while in a queue. You might be trying to find a career. You might, be really busy and need to have ready meals available to you. So in the case of this McDonald's example, and again, bringing that back to product experimentation, whether that is online or offline, it's not necessarily always about changing the product and reinventing the wheel. It's about changing the experience and really putting it back to what is the point of this product? Why are we building it? What's that customer experience? What are they looking for? How are we going to delight them and solve their problems? So your jobs to be done in this case is McDonald's identified they had these two products, but they didn't necessarily sell the milkshake for breakfast in the US. So surprisingly, people were really open to it. They thought, we're busy, we're driving to work, you're on a tube, you don't want to have your McMuffin down your shirt. So the milkshake was, a better option. You can hold it, you can drink it on the go, you can put it in your cup holder. And this was something that was really successful for them. And it was just repurposing the context of that product. So again, you're not reinventing the wheel, you're thinking about the context. And that kind of goes back to the first example we had in the beginning. Another example is, what tasks do people want to avoid? We all hate queuing. So we came up with things like click and collect. We came up with things like, maybe you hate shopping. So you're gonna go and get an online delivery instead. You're saving time. We're busy people. We have a really short attention span. And even further than that, people don't want to maybe deal with the really rubbish substitutes that you get. So instead, they're like, okay, we can still save you time and you can check out yourself while you're at the supermarket. So these are all great inventions in the last couple of years in the digital world where we're creatively problem solving. And this is exactly the same thing you want to apply to your products. And I think Nando's was a really great example as well of solving that problem with their online ordering journey. Another last example, I promise. But in the US, and I think my US colleagues will be familiar with NyQuil, I've never used it. Apparently, it's a bit like Lemsip, except you can't drink it. You can't drink the whole bottle. It's like, you don't want to drink the whole bottle. But it does a similar thing. And so for this, NyQuil had paracetamol, pain relief, also helped people sleep. And they found that a lot of their users, maybe 80% of their users, were using it for sleep only. So they thought, great, we can spend way more money building a whole new product just for sleep. And win-win for everybody. People aren't dousing themselves with unnecessary meds, but they're getting what they need and we're getting more money. Great. So again, this is a really surprising way of how people have used data to enhance their own products, not have to reinvent the wheel, and so on and so forth. But there is a cost to that. You could design the most perfect pavement, but people will still create their own workaround because maybe you haven't tested it. And maybe you're like, okay, well, if that doesn't work, your users are going to go off and do their own thing. And there again is the need for measurement, the need for tracking and figuring out if they're not doing what you want them to do, you need to track and figure out what are they actually doing so that we can work with that. And actually, my favorite example is this one, where you've created the most brilliant UI, your designers are amazing, world-class, and this is your users, right? They're totally going to ruin it. They're going to ruin it, and they're going to be like, you know what? This doesn't work for me. And that is, again, the cost of not putting your customers first, the cost of maybe the hippo approach, maybe, whatever. It's so important to have a successful product, to have a customer-centric product, to put those values first. So this is then all about the concept of design thinking. You start to think about, okay, what's the problem? What are the 10 possible solutions? How can we test that? What's the best way to save money? How do we build that into our agile roadmap? And these are all things that you can do with Split, which is my last couple of slides are about how Split will help you do that. And like I said, Nando's have done a really great job already of explaining the value of doing that, the risk mitigation and all of those things. But it is a win-win for everyone because the customers are happy, they get the best experience, we're keeping up to date with their ever-changing demands and changing behaviors. You have the ability for product teams to measure those behavior and business metrics, so things like engagement and conversion. But your engineering team is also not left out. You know, they might care about things like latency, degradation, unexpected bugs, where together in one platform, you have that single view where you can say, okay, well, there isn't a cost to our, other metrics that we care about, but we do see behavior, there's a positive influence there, and so on. And again, it gets into that cycle of progressive delivery. So a couple of examples of some of the benefits of measuring in Split. So there are loads of ways that you can analyze data. A lot of our customers use GA, Telium, lots of third-party tools, and Split does a really good job of complementing that data. We have the ability to have complex calculated metrics within the platform, performance and behavioral metrics, set up alerts to do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. We calculate statistical significance for you so that you don't have to do that heavy lifting yourself, and you have that ability to allow analytical users to go in and see how their products are performing. So I won't go through everything, but there are a lot of benefits to using Split to help you monitor that. It'll save you time, effort, and help you make smarter decisions in a really quick way. And so what I'm going to leave you with is, whilst feature flags allow you to work faster, measurement allows you to work smarter. And here are a couple of examples of those value levers I mentioned. Yes, it's all about revenue. We love revenue. Everyone wants to increase revenue. But it is about learning. It's about that risk mitigation piece, de-risking deployments, things like the feature rollout, canary releases, painted doors, increasing revenue, doing down funnel checkout revenue-focused experiments. In the optimization and innovation space, it's how can we improve on what we've already built? How do we innovate and be bold and keep up with our competitors? Because they're doing the really risky, cool things, and we're just copying and following the leader kind of situation. So how do you do that, but in a safe way? And then the last one is really important, where you can start to think about categories. Some experiments are purely about insights and research and data. How do you just simply learn more about your audiences? How do you gather more data to feed into that innovation piece? And there's a couple of different types of experiments below, which will help you think about all the different opportunities and ways that you could do that within Split. And that is it. I hope I didn't talk too quickly at the end. Any questions?